Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run an agency called Kevin M. Downey, where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. You can visit our website at kevinmdowney.com. Okay, today's topic, this is a big one. This is the cornerstone of what we deal with as an agency. Been in business 10 years and deal with clients with recruiting and training reps, email marketing, and then, of course, consulting. This is the main pain point that our clients have. Business development, right? So how do you build a business development system for your B2B company and start generating more inbound leads and appointments right now, right? How do you do that? How do you think about doing that? What are the steps you really have to think about? What are the media, right? And so we're going to walk through step by step when we work with clients how to consider it, but this is really important and is truly, again, the cornerstone over 10 years of the problem that most companies have. Because when you think about sales as a problem, right? Company says, well, I need more sales. It used to be you would just hire more sales reps, right? Because your sales reps were the only ones doing business development or lead generation, and they still can, and we're going to get to that. But you added sales reps to add sales, right? And they went out and they built their territory almost always, right? It's not the case anymore. It's very different now, very different structures. It can be the sales rep sometimes, and we're going to talk about that. But that's not always, certainly not even in most cases, is that really the solution, right? So how do we generate more leads and appointments for a B2B company? How do we go about building that business development system? So first, let's talk about our goal. Our goal is to identify decision maker and pain point. And then ultimately, we want to move them, we're generating a lead possibly for sales, or sales is generating their own lead, or we are setting an appointment possibly for sales. But the basic gist of what we're trying to do is identify decision maker and pain point. And there's two kinds of pain points in some situations. There's general and specific or immediate. Okay, so think about, we had a client, hazardous waste processing and disposal. They have outreach that they're doing to companies. They don't really know for sure if every single company on that list actually produces hazardous waste. Based on their SIC code, based on their business type, industries and keywords and things like that, you can hone in and get a really targeted list, but you don't really know for sure. So one of the things you have to do in that case, you have to identify general pain point. Do they produce hazardous waste? Because if they don't, then there's no reason to talk to them, right, or call on them. And then so that's the general pain point. And then we have to identify decision maker. Now, in a lot of cases, we can assume that there is some level of pain point, right, a general pain point. Now the question is, do they have an immediate or specific pain point? So in other words, if they do produce hazardous waste, now you're solving for that general pain point, but now you have to know whether or not they're willing to consider someone else to do it for them, whether they're outsourcing or doing it internally. Are they having trouble with it? Is their vendor not, following up? Is their vendor not showing up all the time? Whatever, right? So the specific point is, will they consider switching vendors, or will they consider an outside vendor, right? So that is your specific pain point. But again, our goal, identify decision maker and pain point, okay? All right, now our question, we're going to talk about media a little bit, but there's only two media that have been proven to me in 10 years to work consistently, and LinkedIn is not one of them. Outbound email and reps doing manualized outreach. That's it. Those are the only two things that have worked consistently. We do email for a couple of LinkedIn agencies, which tells you something. We can generate more leads for them with email than they can with their own product for themselves. LinkedIn's a nice add-on in the manualized outreach process. You're trying to get in touch with somebody. They're not answering their phone. They're not returning a call. They're not responding to email. You ping them on LinkedIn. Maybe you get lucky right in that business development process once you've identified decision maker. But outside of that, it's email and reps doing manualized outreach. So the question is, which should you be using to do business development? And the answer, in most cases, is really both. There's going to be a couple of exceptions to this, and I will get into that here in a second. But the solution is high volume email plus reps. Could be sales or it could be business development, sales development team, dealing with both inbound reps from email plus doing dedicated outbound. Okay, so let me explain this and how you have to think about it. High volume email, by the way, means 1,000 a day or more. Fuzzy math, roughly speaking, okay? If you've got about 20,000 contacts to go after or more, we'll consider that high volume email. When we build email infrastructure for clients, we start at 2,400 a day on one tech stack. The other tech stack we do 6,000 a day or do up to 6,000 a day. So that's kind of our wheelhouse, and then of course we can scale that infinitely. But typically, I would say internally, if you're going to do email yourself, high volume emails, 1,000 a day or more, so 20,000. So we don't want to email people, and I talk about this in other videos, more than once a month. There's a long, detailed explanation for that. Sequences and multi-day spreads between emails, hitting the same person and threading emails together. I talk about this in another thing. It doesn't work. It's passé. It's tired. It's tried. All the algorithms pick up on it. People can totally recognize it. It does not work anymore. You want to get direct response. You want my email to work in the long run, right? It's one email a month per contact. So if you can send 1,000 a day, 20 days, that's 20,000 contacts. If you have 20,000 contacts or more, we would consider that high volume email, okay? So in that solution, which most companies we deal with have, you're looking at outbound email to drive inbound leads, plus either sales or dedicated BDR, SDR teams, so whether you call them BDRs or SDRs, doesn't matter, doing niche outbound targeting and cold outreach to a narrow part of that list, right? Because you're only going to generate, if we said we set up one server in email per rep, right? That server is only going to generate, even in an optimal situation, they're only going to generate 5 leads a day, maybe inbound. It can be more, but typically say 5 leads a day. That's in a good situation. If you're running lower volume, like 1,000 a day, you might only generate, a lead or two a day. That obviously is not enough work for a rep to be dealing purely with inbound leads. Okay, now there's an exception there, so I'm going to come back to that. But if we're doing hardcore business development, right, we're talking about outbound email to drive inbound leads, reps dealing with the inbound leads, and then they're doing cold outreach to a very targeted list. This is the most common solution that I am going to recommend to B2B companies. Now, what are the exceptions? When is a rep maybe not doing outbound email? If the inbound leads for email are coming into the sales team, and the sales team has a pretty mature customer base, they may not still be doing outbound or cold outreach. So they would just deal with inbound leads off of email, and that's their lead base, and that's it, and they're not doing any, business development cold outreach. That would be one situation where you wouldn't have reps doing manualized cold outreach very often anyway, okay? When else would this solution, this is the most common solution, when would this not be applicable? If we're dealing with really niche list, so sub 20,000, but really getting down into like the thousands, I would take automated email out of the picture, and it would be pure manualized outreach. So if we had a group come to us that was targeting hedge fund managers, I think the list was a little under 4,000. That's not an email thing. That is pure unadulterated manualized outreach with reps, right? A rep or reps, right? So depending on how fast you want to move and how you split the list up and those kinds of things. Another time, or one more time, where this would not be necessarily the solution is a company that is larger, that has a big sales team that's covering nationwide. Each rep has a limited number of contacts to go after, say 500 to 1,000, and those reps are going to do their manualized outreach to that narrow list for each of them, to their narrow list individually. That would be the solution where the reps doing manualized outreach for their own lead generation is going to make more sense than trying to bring in automated email. For a lot of different reasons, it's a little bit complex to discuss on this video, but you don't want to be crossing over things, and email does take a dedicated, a person to really manage it properly. So I don't want conflation going on. I'd rather the reps just do manualized outreach in that situation because you have enough sales reps, but that's more of a mid-market enterprise type company type of thing. You wouldn't normally see that in what we would call a typical small business. Okay. But anyway, so the normal solution, high volume outbound email, driving inbound leads, reps dealing with those leads, and then reps doing very targeted niche outreach on a day-to-day basis, say 25 to 50 outreaches a day, maybe 100, to a targeted list, say, for example. Okay, a subset of their list. All right. So what do you have to consider? Talked about this some. How many contacts in your prospect lists? Again, we usually say about 20,000 or so is kind of the dividing line. But again, it varies based upon other things that are in the company. What is the sales team structure? Are we dealing with a startup with just a principal doing their own sales? How is the sales team compensated? ROI on the sales team, right? So in other words, when we think about this, how many contacts do you have in your prospect list? Are we implementing high volume automated email to drive inbound leads? And then who should deal with the leads and who should be doing cold outreach at that point? Should it be the sales team? It's a very common question. I'm not a big fan of dedicated reps in the United States and small businesses, US reps, sales reps doing business development or cold outreach. I would rather build a structure where I'm driving them all appointments and inbound leads, and I'm using dedicated BDR, SDR team to drive them even more inbound leads and appointments than high volume email can get by itself, right? Because I want the sales reps busy with potential prospects all of the time. I don't want to spend $90,000 or $125,000 in base salary on a sales rep to do cold outreach for 6 months, 12 months, or years at that salary to build themselves up a customer base. It doesn't make mathematical sense. It's going to take too long to get ROI out of that rep. So what do? Well, you're obviously using high volume email. Maybe you're using dedicated BDR, SDR team. Could be in the United States, could even be in Latin America. We're getting a lot lower salaries where we can utilize and leverage the volume of email and the lower salaries, for example, of BDRs, SDRs to generate more leads and sales for the sales team we already have, right? Or say in a startup, the owner. And then we expand the sales team based on the number of leads and appointments that we're able to generate, right? So again, let's go back to the beginning. In the old days, sales rep needs to build up a territory. We pay him a salary or whatever it was, right? They go out, they generate their own leads or appointments and build up their customer base, however long that takes. And, that was the only thing you had. You didn't really have high volume email, or you didn't have it. You didn't really have dedicated BDR, SDR teams or telemarketing teams, sometimes, but not very often. And the reps just built their own customer base and territory, right? Different game now. It's much harder to get ROI out of reps doing that are making really, really high base salaries and what they're commanding these days. And it's going to take too long to get ROI out of those reps. Now, again, the bigger the organization, the more they can withstand that length of time it's going to take to get ROI out of the rep, right? Enterprise companies can do it no problem. Mid-market generally can. But as you get down into the small business category, it gets harder and harder and harder. And so the question is, how do you solve that problem in terms of sales team structure and marketing and business development to drive leads, right? So at the end of the day, the formula we want to look at is, how many contacts do you have in your prospect lists? How big is your sales team now, whether it's just yourself as an owner or you've got 2 reps, 5 reps, whatever, 20 reps, doesn't matter. And how are they compensated? How are they performing in the business development side and new customer acquisition side on their own? If they're not generating enough leads and appointments for themselves, right? How do we solve that? Do we even consider reducing the sales team size if they are not full with customers and adding more email and outbound business development reps to generate more leads and appointments for the sales reps that are performing, right? And that is something that just happened. We had a client not that long ago brought on as an email client, and actually took his 7 sales reps and cut it down to 4, fired 3, let go of 3 reps. Unfortunately, felt bad for them, of course, but he let go of 3 reps because they were just not, he's giving them base salaries and they're not generating enough leads and appointments for themselves. It was taking too long for them to build their customer bases. He had 1 new rep that was doing great. Other 3 reps were basically full with customers, and so he took the 1 rep that could take on more customers. He could put all of the leverage in the marketing and the way to drive that person leads and appointments until they had a full customer base. Then he was going to add another sales rep again. So then he would go from 4 to 5. But it's all based on the leads and appointments that could be generated for that sales rep that could take on more customers. And that's how you really have to think about this in modern B2B sales team structure, and business development. Okay. And then finally, adding right email and maybe a BDR, SDR team. Again, if you're using email and you're driving inbound leads and you have reps doing some dedicated, a niche outbound, for example, should that be a BDR, SDR team, or should that be your salespeople? Just depends on your sales. Again, go back to the previous topic. Depends on your sales team structure, how big they are, how much can they handle, how much are they getting paid. I think there's all kinds of things that go into that. And so that's on a case-by-case basis. But email, most cases, very good thing to add. High volume email in particular. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. If you have any questions Our website is kevinmdowney.com. We can help you with recruiting and training reps, either sales or business development, sales development reps. We handle local, in-house, remote. Obviously, we handle remote, international, Latin America in particular. If you want someone for a lower base, right, a team with lower bases, and you want that, we've got that talent all the time available for you. Of course, we can handle your email marketing, and then, of course, if you want full-blown consulting, we can jump in and do that for you if you need a lot more than just one or two little things like that. Okay? All right, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time. Best of luck in business, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.